Hi, and welcome to Filmmakers Compass Podcast, a show where we talk about movies and, well, more movies. I'm D-Man, joined by CP. CP, how are you doing today?
Dude, I'm doing fantastic, but you forgot to say we also talk about and more movies
Oh, yeah, movies and more
and
movies.
and more movies.
Yeah, there you go. Well, at least we did say it. So, I mean, we can always redo the intro, but I feel like it's much more fun. It's
No, I,
fun to
I
just go on the fly.
I think we just need to add like emphasize the fact that this is a movie-based podcast. We don't just talk about movies and more movies, but also and more movies and more movies and more movies.
Guilty. Could talk about movies all day. In fact, last night I was watching clips from The Matrix, and I had quite a few good conversations about The Matrix. So that
Why
was
didn't
pretty
you just
cool.
put The Matrix on instead of watching clips? Come on, man. You're better than that.
I should have. I need to rewatch the whole thing, including the Animatrix, because I kind of had my mind blown. So I got to take a look back and give it a rewatch. But we'll talk about that another day. So before we get into our topics this week, CP, I did want to do a couple of shout outs. So first up, in a really cool twist on what we talked about last week, we mentioned that when we were at San Diego Comic Con, we went up to Regent's Pizza for deep dish pizza. And it ends up that you tagged and they saw our post and they responded. So they actually said thanks for coming by and then a pizza emoji. So
Yay.
well, thank you, Regent's Pizza. It was delicious, and I would gladly come back. So, on that note, though, Drucker also chimed in and said, "Who eats deep dish pizza like that, though? Heathen." And that's
Uh,
because the clip that you posted of me eating the pizza was me eating deep dish, holding it like a regular slice of
I
pizza.
know it was pretty epic.
Yeah. I don't know why mine held together and yours did not. So generally, Drucker, I know exactly what you're talking about, which is deep dish because it is honestly like a lasagna or a pie. You normally
Yeah,
eat it with you know, a fork and knife. So yeah, this one happened to hold together and was fairly easy for me to eat as a regular old slice.
true.
So next up, I have a shout out for Mike Rivard, who was talking about the Acolyte. So this is a shout out that goes a little ways back during our hiatus. And he said, I'm pretty disappointed so far. Haven't seen episode 5 yet, which let's go ahead and throw it out there. Episode 5 was probably the best episode.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
things might have been looking up eventually. He said the high level elevator pitch for the plot seems like it would make a decent show, but the writing is really bad. The dialogue is bland at best and painful frequently. The episode to episode conflicts that the characters need to overcome are just absurdly lame. The security droid from episode 2 was like, what the fuck? Really? I just can't believe they that made it off the idea board in the writing room. The acting feels bad, but the script is so bad it's hard to tell if the actors are to blame. The set looks blatantly fake. Mike, I did not see any praise. So, and to piggyback off that, Matt Shula chimed in on the Acolyte as well and said, show is trash. So apparently listeners of this podcast did not like the Acolyte. I did finish the whole show, CP, so I do have my thoughts. Maybe I'll go into that on a deeper dive video. I didn't think it was absolute trash. I enjoyed elements of the show, but I mean there are things that Mike mentioned. Shula just show is trash didn't really give any
Mhm.
you know analytical thought to that comment.
Yeah. I mean, let me
I don't
chime
know.
in. You know, I haven't
Yes.
seen the show. You also know I will not be watching the show. But as the audience is well aware, my opinion is I second Shula and agree that the show is complete trash.
Well, okay. Well, here we go. While we're talking about trash, Boone jumped in on Rebel Moon Part 2.
The
So,
regular edition or
CP,
the extended director's cut.
no, I think of the regular one. I mean, Boone, I
Mm.
want to extend a giant thank you to watching Part 2 and finishing what CP and I thought would make a great episode at a later date. And I don't think either of us really even cared to talk about it. So,
No.
much less maybe even saw it.
I
So,
watched it, but it was not anything praiseworthy.
well, Boone says, good God, I just finished Rebel Moon Part 2. As usual, Zack Snyder's special effects, fight scenes, and slow mo are the best parts, but yikes, what a mess. Way better than the first one, but still inexcusable for the money invested in this. Then again, maybe that R rated Snyder cut will be better. So there you go.
And that's the thing. So now we got to rewatch both of them again to see the extended edition, and I'll be like, "Whoa, D-Man was actually really good. I can't believe they didn't release this one first." And Zack Snyder, like I've given like 9 hours of my life to watching the same movie.
I know the first part one, he's like, "Hey, we're just assembling the Justice League in Star Wars." You're like, "This is the same movie with the same problems." So anyway, CP, we got a review from none other than Samboy, who said that new podcast with Captain America and some dude is just okay.
Hmm.
So
Is that a thank you? Thank you, Samboy?
it's just a review, you
It's
know.
just okay. I guess that's good. He didn't
But I
say it's
appreciate.
complete trash.
Thank you so much for listening, and hopefully, we're only going up. But thank you also for leaving a review. So Ivor chimed in on Fallout. He said, I finished it. Quirky sci fi. Walton Goggins might be doing his best work. I want more. Have questions about the Fallout space. Sets and production design were better than some movies. Can't say enough good things about this series. I hope season 2 explains more of this world. So, after a couple of, trash reviews, we got a good one from Ivor. So, thank you, Ivor, for chiming in. And
Did
I
you watch
appreciate you
Fallout?
guys. I did not, but that's what I was going to say. I appreciate you guys actually sending us your reviews of these different movies because in, I don't get around to see every single thing that comes out. So a lot of these, I like hearing from you guys and your opinions because on one hand, I'm not skipping Star Wars, but on the other hand, I will take your reviews into account and probably skip trash. So, Ivor, thanks for chiming in. Did you watch it?
Yes, actually, during our podcasting hiatus, I went to an Amazon release event at the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences for Emmy
Wow. Oh, that's
consideration. And I think
exciting.
I told you, and like Walter Goggins was there, Jonathan Nolan was there. It was an incredible event with good food
That's
and got to
amazing.
meet the people, the creative minds behind the show. So at that screening, they showed the pilot episode. And I
Okay.
was really intrigued. So I went back and I finished it and I enjoyed it. I never really played the Fallout games.
Yeah, I never played it.
So I know the diehard game fans were kind of upset that some of the lore had been tweaked a bit, but I enjoyed what I saw.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, I know it's so weird because like video game translation into film doesn't always go well.
Yeah.
There's many examples. I think we've even done a segment before in the past where we sort of looked at like video games that became movies,
Mhm.
and it's been a rough go. So to hear that this one actually was pretty good is a good sign because for every Fallout we get Borderlands or Halo or
Yeah.
you know, you're
Yeah.
like, I don't know, not great. And then finally, Drucker chimes in and he said, just finished the Star Wars or Spider-Man and Star Wars podcast. I had so much fun listening to you guys talk about Star Wars. I'm going back and watching them all again now. Yes,
Good
always
job.
go
Good
back.
job.
Gonna do the same with Spider-Man. And if Return of the Jedi wasn't a fitting end for the series, then Rise of Skywalker was definitely not a proper ending for the entire Skywalker saga. I agree. Also, an unpopular opinion. I enjoyed the Spider-Man 3 Venom dance scene. Oh, that's awesome. Someone
Oh,
did.
wow.
Someone did. How about that?
Someone did. Okay.
He's like, I completely forgot that Sam Raimi directed the entire original trilogy, probably why it is my favorite of the series. Well, I do love
Fair enough.
Spider-Man 1 and 2. 3 is a bit of a tougher watch. That dance scene is maybe ahead of its time. I mean, I'm trying to think of a way to give it a compliment. I'm glad somebody liked it. So, and it makes sense maybe that it would be Drucker, I think. So, on that note, CP, I'll throw it over to you. Did you have any shout outs on this episode?
Yeah, I was in Oakland this past weekend.
You
Wanted
have
to
shout
give
outs? Oh
I
my gosh, I love
want
it.
to give shout outs to my friend Diana, who I have not seen her since before the pandemic, but we were managed to get some time and catch up, so that was cool. Also, want to give a shout out to all the Oakland Raiders fans. Your team's gone, so I'm sorry.
It's like the biggest troll ever. It's the Las Vegas Raiders, CP. The Oakland Raiders are no more. But
I
speaking of
know.
that, I actually did in our hiatus. I was in Las Vegas and I did a, Raiders stadium tour. It was pretty cool, but I'm bringing that up because inside they had a like merchandise section and they actually did still sell Los
Oakland
Angeles
stuff.
Raiders and Oakland Raiders stuff.
That's
So
smart.
they, haven't wholly abandoned their history here in favor of Las Vegas. Although it was overwhelmingly Vegas stuff, they did
Mhm.
still sort of honor where their history has come from. So that's
Hmm.
pretty cool.
All right, that's cool.
All right, well, I'm gonna throw it over to you. Let's go ahead and do a little box office breakdown.
All righty. All right, it's time for our box office breakdown. So the funny thing is, actually, let's start with the worldwide box office, D-Man.
Okay.
The worldwide numbers have not changed the rankings have not changed at all since last week.
So Deadpool still did not surpass Inside Out 2?
Still did not surpass Inside Out 2, which I find crazy because
That is wild.
Deadpool has broken the billion-dollar barrier, but Inside Out 2 has broken a $1.5 billion barrier. So it is
That's
still the
insane.
number one movie of the year. And I mean, at this rate, I imagine it's still going to keep climbing a little bit.
Well, if it's number one internationally, I mean, that makes me think that it is fending off Deadpool and Wolverine as maintaining being the highest grossing film of the year. But I have heard that, I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine got to $1 billion faster. People are going to see it multiple times. So you're not trying to bring new people out necessarily. And by all accounts, both have had really good word of mouth.
No, I definitely agree. So then let's look at the domestic box office for this past weekend. Now, Inside Out is no longer in the top 5. It was last week.
This is where they're going to make it
It
up.
slipped to 7, but we have to remember Deadpool and Wolverine, while still at number 1, had a more than nearly 50% drop off in attendance from the previous weekend. So
Okay.
Inside Out didn't have quite as substantial of a drop. So
Interesting.
I don't think Deadpool and Wolverine is going to overtake it as rapidly as we're expecting.
Well, I mean, we will watch these two Disney juggernauts. Well, Pixar and Disney, or Pixar and Marvel, Disney umbrella movies duke it out at the box office and see who reigns supreme at the end of the year. The funny thing is, we already had Dune Part 2, and they've both, I believe, passed that movie. I don't think there's anything else on the box office lineup for the remainder of the year that would really challenge either of these. If it was, it would be a surprise, probably out of nowhere.
I think Joker could have a serious shot.
I mean, I don't know if
Joker did pretty well.
I don't know if it'll Joker 2 will pass an animated movie. I'm gonna bet it doesn't even pass Inside Out 2, even if Deadpool and Wolverine does.
Well, I think Deadpool and Wolverine is definitely at some point going to pass Inside Out 2. I think it's going to be a little longer than we were initially thinking, but that's all. I guess we'll see. The rest of the box office numbers, I mean, Despicable Me 4 and Twisters both dropped down a position, and Borderlands and It Ends With Us have both entered the top 5. Borderlands was only at 4, but most people who saw it were kind of unimpressed, and it didn't have great reviews, so that's not totally unexpected. And I have no idea what It Ends With Us is, so I can't really even comment on it.
Okay. Well, I know coming out probably between now and our next podcast recording is Alien Romulus.
So excited.
I wholly expect that to do fairly well. I've also already heard some good things on social and some of the reviews coming in that I mean, maybe it's not the best Alien movie made, but it's definitely the return to form that I think we were hoping for.
Yes, I'm so excited.
So, and then I mean, we got to give a little tip of the cap here to Deadpool and Wolverine being rated R. For as much money as it's made, I believe if it hasn't already, it's on track to pass, I think, one of the Hangover films as like the highest grossing R-rated movie, which is quite impressive. You know, R-rated movies making $1 billion.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right.
Just because you limit your audience.
And I know we've talked about this a few times. We were not expecting this to be the quote unquote savior of the MCU from the perspective of the MCU storyline. However, we did think it was going to be a great payday for Disney, and everything is shaping up to show exactly that.
Yeah. So, well, congratulations. That's awesome. Well, speaking of Disney CP, we're going to jump into our topics this week. And first up, none other than D23, which is Disney's, homegrown convention where they announce all things Disney. And we got that last week. Tons of announcements coming out of there for movies and TV shows, as well as a bunch of different theme park announcements, which we probably won't get into. But let's get into the movies and TV stuff. So first up, there was a live action Snow White trailer. Now, we've talked about these Disney animation classics being, converted into live action many times on this podcast. And I just wanted to get your take on this trailer for the next live action adaptation of a animation classic.
I mean, based on everything that we're seeing now, it looks almost identical to the original animated Snow White, which I know this movie has been shrouded in controversy for Disney. With every decision they've kind of made, they've upset a core group of people. And for a while there, the original screenshot of the live action showed actors that looked nothing like the original portrayal of the Seven Dwarfs. So now they're back to something which much more closely resembles the original animated version. And I mean, we'll see. I'm not a big fan of rehashing the same movie over and over in the exact same way, but I imagine it's going to have a good payday. Most of those live action remakes have done really, really well for Disney.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to point out, and I saw this on social media, was somebody did a side by side of the shots with the actual animated movie and how similar they actually are. And if we go back to our discussion on the Disney live action adaptation of Pinocchio, that was one of, I believe, both of ours criticisms was that it's like, why even do it?
Mhm.
Like at that point, like just watch the other one if it's just going to be this, absolute, adaptation of this thing.
Yeah.
So that, and then like you said, combined with some of the comments that Rachel Ziegler had made regarding sort of how they wanted to update it. I mean, we saw this sort of backlash with something like Lightyear, where people sort of turned on the movie despite, honestly, if you go see it, probably you look at those comments and you're like, they're totally mundane and meant nothing really overall, but people latch onto that and then carry that baggage with them. So hopefully it doesn't detract too much from the success of the movie. I mean, the trailer itself, I thought looked pretty good. The dwarves looked a little funny, very CG. I mean, it didn't seem like they were concerned with them looking that way.
It wasn't like with The Lion King, for example, where the CG was much more an attempt to replicate real life. It was more like the Pinocchio style, where you're like, this is just animated Pinocchio.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. There was mention of a live action Lilo and Stitch. There was a little teaser of the sort of, a live action version of
Mhm.
Stitch that sort of popped out of the screen, which
Mhm.
was interesting to me. But again, if all we're doing is just remaking these classics shot for shot, that doesn't enthrall me all that much.
Yeah.
I have said before, I understand that these movies get a shot at, an entire new generation of kids now, and
Mhm.
there's something to be excited about, and they can go back and watch the animated one, and, parents can enjoy it because they loved the animated one. But it's just, yeah, what are you bringing to the table here?
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed like the Benicio del Toro Pinocchio,
Mhm. Where it's
where it's
actually
like,
a different
yeah, it's
take.
like it's a different take on a classic story. I think that's a little bit more interesting to me, but we'll see. Hopefully these are pretty good. So next up, sequels. Toy
Who knew?
Story 5, Incredibles 3, Frozen 3 and 4, and Zootopia 2. All those franchises are getting sequels, CP. And we knew this was coming. I believe Bob Iger had made comments that they're probably going to lean heavily into the IP that they currently have. So it shouldn't be surprising. But I do wonder, and this is part of what everybody talks about when you're like, why is this movie getting made? Do each of those really have stories to be told, or is Disney greenlighting these based on just the IP that they have? Right. And then they're like, okay, let's go figure out what the story's going to be.
Mhm.
Because when you do things in that way, oftentimes the movie comes across that way as it was just made to sell toys, or it was just made, because people would come versus having, the natural next step in those stories. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I think we need to take them kind of one at a time. I am so mad about Toy Story 5. Why do we need it? You killed everything that you created and we loved about Toy Story 3 when you made Toy Story 4. You're just ruining all my toys from childhood. Let's move on. Come on, guys. You've done enough damage to my life, Disney. I don't need you messing with other good stuff.
Well, okay, Incredibles 3. Is this maybe worthy of a trilogy here?
Um, Just so everybody hates me more, I actually hate the first two Incredibles, so I have no desire to
You
see the
hate
third one.
Incredibles 1? I mean, 2, I can see a little bit more, but I actually like
It is a
2 as well.
blatant ripoff of the Fantastic Four.
That's
It's a
awesome.
blatant ripoff.
Well, I wish they would have made then the Fantastic Four The Incredibles because
Then
it's
they should
so
have just
amazing.
called they should have just called it the Fantastic Four, and it would have been like awesome.
So, when it comes to Frozen, I want to acknowledge that I watched this documentary on the making of Frozen 2.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed that they were having trouble with the story of Frozen 2 almost all the way through production. And it makes me wonder if there really is more story to tell here or if they're just going to be trying to
Grasping
figure it
at
out.
straws. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, oh, well, what can we do? How can we dig a little deeper? And maybe there is more because I like the characters. Frozen 2 actually at one point became the highest grossing animated film, and they actually did the handoff with Inside Out 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, Frozen 2 was incredibly successful. We got more really good songs. So, I don't know if the dream team can get back together and find a reason to create more. And it sounds like they must have a story because they're doing 3 and 4. So, there's
Yeah.
2. So, they got to have something.
I mean,
And
we'll
then
see. Yeah.
the other one that's interesting is Zootopia. It's Zootopia 2, but the title's Zootopia. It makes me wonder if we're going to be following the same characters or we're just returning to the city. Maybe there's other stories
Mm,
in Zootopia to explore. I'm sure some of the characters will pop up for sure, but maybe there's something new going on and we'll explore that in Zootopia, which that could be
yeah.
cool.
Maybe. That'll be interesting.
So, CP, swapping over to Marvel, Agatha all along. If you watched WandaVision, you know that Agatha was the adversarial witch, and now she's getting her own show. Kind of seemed like a show where it was like, do we need that, Marvel? But I thought the trailer was pretty good. What do you think?
I thought the trailer actually was surprisingly cool. I like the idea of pairing it with an October release. Okay, that's smart. But again, I don't actually know why we need the story.
Yeah, I mean,
Especially
that
since
was
it
the
seems like the character of Wanda has been written out of the MCU at this point.
yeah.
So I don't really understand why we're exploring it further.
And sort of I don't know, it's one of those things where like was there anyone asking for it?
Mm-hmm.
Like at all?
Mm-hmm.
Because in addition to that, there was also I don't believe there was a trailer, but there was just a panel at D23 about like Ironheart.
Yeah.
And just the idea of like, again, did anybody want that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. I know I had my criticisms of the Ironheart suit from Black Panther Wakanda and Wakanda Forever. And I don't know. Based on that, I wouldn't be hyped for it. But also, I think back and I'm like, I love the Iron Man movies, but I mean, am I just being sold RDJ there? Like, without him, is it
Yeah.
just someone else in a
Yeah.
suit?
No, you're absolutely right.
So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. But these Marvel shows or Marvel projects are the ones where I feel like they're the lingering from Phase 4 that where Marvel is just throwing everything at the wall. And on that note, CP, I don't know if you heard, but literally today, before we recorded the podcast, Eternals 2 got canceled.
Well, it should have.
I saw via a report in Variety that I don't even think those characters are ever returning to the MCU. They may not even acknowledge that movie again.
It didn't land well. It didn't seem like fans were super excited about it. I think that's a smart move. They really
But
need to focus on condensing the MCU so we can rebuild a smaller Avenger team that we're attached to instead of constantly expanding the Avengers.
well, one of the things is we are getting another team up in Thunderbolts, which we
Mm-hmm.
got some first footage at D23, which was pretty cool because we talked about Comic-Con and while the cast was there and they had a panel, they didn't really show anything. They saved footage for Fantastic Four, particularly, and a couple other things. But yeah, at D23, we finally got some first footage, which I actually couldn't find that footage. Did you find it?
I could not find it online. I just saw they talked about it, but I didn't see
Yeah,
it.
I saw a couple social media clips where people showed like they were in the audience and they posted something, but I mean they couldn't post like the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I know it happened. So I don't know what it looked like. I think you and I talked about that last week. We were kind of like, intriguing. Maybe they could do something really fun with it. I think they're leaning very heavily into their cast and the chemistry that those guys all have with each other, and probably going to try to make this movie like a fun team up movie, and hopefully people will just get on board.
Yeah.
So, but speaking of the movies that are the ones that we actually want, there's the new Captain America: Brave New World, and we got a new trailer, and we got a literal monster look at Red Hulk.
Yep. Which was
That was
awesome.
that was pretty cool. I mean, dude, right now that's shaping up to be a dope movie, and I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic. That's what I'll say.
Oh, I mean, we talked about just like the thriller style and sort of a return to boots on the ground instead of all
Mhm.
this, space hopping and all that
Yeah.
different stuff. So I'm excited for a return to form there. And I mean, I'm not sure how I feel about, Harrison Ford as the president of the United States turning into Red Hulk. It's kind of weird,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It looked great, which is fantastic for special effects artists. I'm glad there was a return to form there. I was like, Red Hulk looked fantastic.
Hmm.
Versus, like, I remember getting the She-Hulk trailer, and everybody was like, oh,
Yeah, right.
wow. Or even you go all the way back up our list here to Snow White, and you and I were like, it didn't even seem like they cared if
Yeah.
those dwarves
Yeah.
looked
Yeah.
CG or not. They're like, whatever. So flipping the script here, CP, they got a title drop for the next Avatar movie. Apparently, it's called Fire and Ash. So we've
Hmm.
have Avatar, Way of Water, and now Fire and Ash. So this definitely seems like they're following the elements. Um,
Yeah,
I
and
don't know what that signals, but
I know that in interviews that I read with James Cameron from about a year ago, 2 years ago, when Avatar Part 2 was released, he did say that he wants to keep exploring different
like ecosystems.
aspects of Pandora. And in this one specifically, they're going to go meet a tribe of people who live like in the volcanoes, around the
Oh,
volcanoes.
okay,
Yeah.
cool. That's pretty dope, actually. I'd be down. I mean, did you know that they've already like greenlit like 5 of these?
Yeah, I know that Disney's like, make as many as you want, James Cameron, do your thing.
But I cannot blame them. Like literally, they released Avatar 2 after like 10 freaking years, and it still made almost $2 billion or whatever.
I mean, it was insane. It was insane. Yeah.
So, I mean, keep going. Let's see if the next one's any good. I mean,
Yeah,
I had a
right.
lot of fun watching it, and thankfully, I did end up getting to see it in 3D. So that was dope.
Good.
Um, okay, CP, this is the one I gotta talk to you. I hope you watched the trailer here. Star Wars Skeleton Crew.
Oh, dude, I watched it.
What do you think? I
It's gonna
mean,
suck. It's Disney Star Wars. It's gonna suck.
oh, dude,
It
it's
looks
like,
like it could be fun. It's like the Goonies meets Star Wars. And that's how I
yeah.
know it's gonna be terrible because Disney loves nothing more than taking stuff that I love and crushing it. So it's gonna suck. What did
I
you
mean,
think?
wow. I mean, Suburbia Star Wars, it was like people living at their homes. This is insane.
Yeah, right.
It just had like to me, like you said, like a Goonies or a Stranger Things vibe. It seemed like they were going to take this show in a totally different, wacky direction, and I was kind of down for it. They're following a group of kids. I was like, okay, here we go. This reminds me of like old school Star Wars, like Legends books, from back in the day where you'd follow all these different people, and sometimes you got stories like this, and it was pretty dope.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely going to give it a shot. I was like, this looks so far and away different than like anything Star Wars I've ever seen. Maybe I will absolutely hate it, but I don't know. I'm down to try something new.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I hope that I'm wrong, but we'll see.
All right, just a few more CP real quick. Into the Spider-Verse sequel is delayed by 2 to 3 years. I mean, what were they doing promising this movie in 2024?
I don't
That's
know.
crazy.
I was wondering what is going on behind the scenes that caused such an epic delay. Especially since the first two were so well loved, there was a huge following, right? Everybody is ready for the
Yeah.
sequels, and I don't really know what went wrong. So I'm assuming at some point we're gonna get some leaked information about some disaster going on behind the scenes, and we'll then realize that was exactly why they had to delay it for another 2 years.
And I think it stings a little bit more knowing that the last one ended on a cliffhanger.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
It's literally a part one to a part two. And so it feels a little bit like, taking the wind out of your sails because you're like, oh, I was hoping for that. And now, 3 years, I saw it could be coming out in 2027. I don't even know where I'll be. I might even be a parent.
We could all be
I,
dead.
I might be dead. Yeah, I don't know. So I hope, and if I'm dead, I hope my kid's alive.
Well, we could still be podcasting. Who knows? We might
I'll
not.
be right here. I'll actually be right here in this room. Yeah, that's probably the most likely thing. So I know that's Into the Spider-Verse, so we're not talking D23 announcements specifically anymore, but just sort of a couple announcements of things that came out. So another thing was Netflix ordered a Ghostbusters animated series.
Oh man, I'm
The
really,
real Ghostbusters, throwing it
really,
back to the 90s.
I really hope it's good. I mean, you know how much I love Ghostbusters. Our audience knows how much I love Ghostbusters. And the 80s Ghostbusters cartoon was really cool.
Yeah, it was wacky. Slimer was like a big deal.
I mean, in fact, in some ways, I think the 80s Ghostbusters cartoon was more impactful than the actual movie itself, because I think a whole generation of kids in like the late 80s, early 90s watched that cartoon growing up.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, I had bed sheets of the real Ghostbusters.
And all the toys,
Yeah, I had
right?
the toys
Like,
too. Yeah. It was fun.
so I really hope that it's done right. And Netflix has been very conscientious about this, right? They greenlit the He-Man, the Grayskull series, right? They've been going back to a lot of these 80s properties that people, that still have intense fan bases and trying to, return to form in cartoon. And we'll see if it pays off. I'm actually, it's probably one of the announcements that's come out that I'm most excited to see.
Yeah, me too. I'll be in. I mean, we got new Ninja Turtles, new Ghostbusters, new Transformers.
Yeah.
What is happening?
It's
You
just
know,
like childhood all over again.
but it's like a return to the animation. I
Mhm.
think in years past, especially early 2000s, like 2010s, it was like, oh, live action Transformers, live action Ghostbusters, uh, or live action Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
And now it's sort of this return to the animation form that, many people originally fell in love with these franchises with.
No, I agree. I agree.
So that's pretty cool. And then I'm throwing this one over to you. It's only rumors, but apparently there is a Schumer cut of Batman Forever
Oh,
that has absolutely been confirmed.
oh man. Our audience will remember we did talk a little bit about this a long time ago. And with the death of Joel Schumacher, there has been an increased kind of push for the Schumacher cut. I'm I'm really excited. I know Kevin Smith claims that he has seen it,
Yeah, right. It's
and
out there.
he claims that it's a totally different story where the characters of Two-Face and the character of the Riddler aren't quite so goofy. They're a little darker. It,
Zany.
it goes a little bit more into Batman's relationship with Chase Meridian and his, still thoughts towards his parents' death. So I've always wanted to see it because I have such a love-hate relationship
Yeah.
with Batman Forever. There's things that are done so well, but there's some things that are just so goofy Schumacher that it kind of kills the elements of the film. And my understanding is the reason why the Schumacher cut was cut down to the theatrical cut was actually it's much darker. And so some of these darker elements WB wanted them to remove from this family Batman movie. So
Dude, that's so ironic given where they came from with Tim Burton and Batman Returns. And I guess there's also a backstory associated not only with this cut, but with the film in which Tim Burton and Michael Keaton were originally attached to this movie.
yeah,
And you can find a video on it where they sort of, I don't think they have, it's not an actual documentary. It's like YouTube investigative,
yeah,
video,
yeah.
but they sort of explore like, how did this all fall through? And we end up with the version that we got. And it was pretty interesting. Because yeah, they were attached. They were supposed to come back and then everything really kind of fell apart. And it was, like you said, a lot of it was the studios sort of trying to push Tim Burton, to do
To
things
tone
a
down
certain
the
way.
Tim Burtonness. Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
especially after Batman Returns, they're probably like, no, this has to be back to a
Yeah.
kids movie.
The Penguin like coughing black blood.
Yeah.
But then you think, I mean, how goofy Batman Forever is. And I mean, obviously Batman and Robin, but we're talking about Batman Forever. like, they pull that bank vault out of a building and then like out of nowhere it's like filled with boiling acid.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's boiling acid. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and I don't know, like the other day I was watching a scene from Batman and Robin, and like he goes and robs a museum, and then out of nowhere jumps into a rocket, like,
Yeah.
and then Mr. Freeze like shoots out of the museum, which you're like, I mean, did he put that there? Like, I have no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. It's
Or was that like a rocket in the museum that just works? I don't know. And then I was like, at first I was like, where is he even going? Like,
yeah. Yeah.
but then he does jump out of it. So, I mean, it was just his escape vehicle. He just went up. But then the thing is, he like lands in this building, and like right when he gets to the bottom, one of his truck people just shoot in there and then pick him up. And I was
Yeah.
like, did they know where he was going to land? Like, did anybody
Yeah.
even know he was getting in this rocket?
I know. I know. I know. Yeah, it's so I've always wanted to see it just to see something closer to because Joel Schumacher himself said that he was really kind of trying to blend this dark, brooding noir influence on Batman with the more pow zoing
Yeah.
Adam West version of Batman, and it created its own distinct style. But my understanding is the Schumacher cut is much more of the dark noir Batman
I
that
mean, I
I
would watch it.
really want to. I really want to see it.
Yeah, like I'd be down to watch it. I mean, the thing is like I think about Batman Forever and I think about Batman and Robin, and I'm like, as a kid, I loved them.
Mhm.
So, like, there's also like a nostalgic place in my heart where I'm like, I enjoyed those movies as a kid. And then I think about it, and as an adult, they're also like awesomely bad.
Yeah.
Like they're so bad in some ways that you're like, it's stupid. Like he pulls out his credit card and it's like good through forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
where you're like, oh my God, that's so ridiculous, but also kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like we have that. It's out there. Like the bat suit has nipples, you
I know
know?
for a fact at a point, there was a point in my life where I would have told you definitively Batman Forever is the greatest movie ever made.
Yeah, right. So like it's so
Definitively.
weird because I'm like, on one hand, yeah, if I'm just being objective and judging it, I'm like, oh no, they're not very good. But then I'm like, I don't know, but I'd watch them.
So
100% I'd watch it.
yeah, yeah. I'm really excited to see what they do with it because
Dude,
I
and
know
isn't Robin supposed to be like a kid? And it's like Chris O'Donnell.
yeah.
He's like a grown man. You're
He's like
like,
a
I don't know.
teen, okay? He's a teen.
Yeah, I'm like, what is this? Yeah,
But
they're and then all their dramatic like suit ups. Like, why are all the vehicles like so far down tunnels? Why wouldn't you be closer?
so
Like,
they
I feel
can
like
run down the
speed.
tunnel with the capes blowing and the
Yeah, but
smoke.
I feel like
And why is
speed
there
would
all
be
the
a factor.
smoke and mist everywhere? That's what I want to know, especially in the Batcave.
Yeah, or
Like,
like,
you need some ventilation, Batman.
dude, there's just things that happen where I'm like, what? Like when Robin's frozen and Batman puts him in water, he shines a laser on the water and it just lights up red. Like I guess when the water's warm, it turns red.
I think my very favorite is the one where Commissioner Gordon has the bat signal up and then the Riddler commandeers it and turns it into the question mark.
Oh
And
yeah,
he's like, he's not coming. And then the bat jet shoots right
it.
through and he turns around and gives them the thumbs up. And you're like, oh,
Oh yeah,
Batman, so cringeworthy, yet so awesome when I was a 6-year old.
I know. I'd 100% watch the Schumacher cut for sure. So that'd be pretty cool.
Mhm.
But it's weird because, like you said, he's passed away. So even though it may be out there, it's like, did he ever actually
Is
want
it
it
really his
released?
cut? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like if he was still with us and was like, guys, you got to check it out. I got permission. I heard. So speaking of that, I was just reading about it, but apparently they only need like a million or $2 million to just actually finish the effects and
To
make
like
it
and digitize it
a
from
cut. Yeah,
film.
like not just like raw
I mean,
footage,
come
but
on,
like
come on. DC, Warner Brothers, just do this as a gift to fans. Like, why not?
it would be pretty cool. I'd be down for
$1.2
it.
million, throw it in the theater for a special limited release weekend. You'll make that
I'd
money back.
seriously go. Like if they
Yeah.
put Batman Forever back in the theaters, I would do. I would
Me
go.
too. Me too. Like, why not? Come on, guys.
All right, CP. Well, it's a little bit of a shorter episode this week, but we'll go ahead and wrap this thing up. So we just wanted to go through the rundown that was mostly the D23 announcements and some other announcements that have happened between now and our last episode. So a lot of news the last couple weeks with Comic-Con and D23 and all that. So pretty exciting. There's all kinds of new content. And don't worry, we will actually be talking about some specific movie stuff soon. And Ivor, I heard you, and we're going to bring back some lists as well. So we'll have a little bit of fun. But anyway, CP, that does it for our episode. So everybody, just wanted to say thank you so much for tuning in and hope you really enjoyed the show. You can follow along at filmmakerscompass.com, where we have a feed of all of our episodes and links to all of our social media at Film Comp Podcast. You could follow me personally at Big Kid D-Man and CP.
You could follow me at IndyCal5. Thank you for hanging out and talking movies or conventions or whatever you want with us. We will see you back here next week. And until then, keep watching movies.